big takeaway coming out of this game is with Kamario Taylor and the performance that he was able to have and leading some touchdown drives. Obviously, all three touchdowns State had were scored by Kamario Taylor. And you saw some moments of the offense looking like it could function a little bit better with him on the field. We saw the same thing 2 weeks ago. I guess it's more like a weekend ago when they were at Arkansas and Kamario has to come in the game and 3 drives leads a pair of touchdown drives with big plays and does some things on the field just from a playmaking standpoint that you're not able to get with Blake Shapen. So, Shapen goes down in this game, took a hard hit, the type of hit where he's clearly, is he going to be 100% the rest of the year? You don't know. I mean, I'm not sitting here suggesting he's out for the year. I don't know. But it was a hit that, Levy talked about. He wanted to come back in the game. He could not go back in the game. And today at the press conference, Levy was asked about it, and no, he did not practice today, Shapen that is. And they're going to have to sort of evaluate things throughout the week. It didn't the way Levy talked about it when he was asked, would Shapen be the starter? And he did say if he's fully healthy, he will start. But he also kind of, maybe reading between the lines here, didn't make it sound like he's all that confident in his health the rest of the way. And, he was asked about Kamario Taylor and, took away, the good things that he did last week. Also looked at like, hey, here's where, he's got to hit the layups and there's some plays he wants back for sure. But also expressed his confidence in Kamario Taylor. We can get into if there is a decision to be made, what the right decision is. But it kind of sounds like, Christian, they're starting to prepare for the chance that Kamario Taylor might be making his first start for Mississippi State up in Columbia this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you never know until you actually see a guy start if it's truly the right decision. I mean, Blake Shapen this year has had good moments. He's also had some down moments. Um, and I'm sure the guys on offense are bought into Shapen. I also am not going to hold my breath on that. I don't know 100%, but I think it's not the worst idea in the world to roll the dice with the um, true freshman redshirt,
True
Kamario
freshman.
Taylor. Anyway, yeah, um, he's got good numbers so far. He's got a QBR of 93. He's got 3 touchdowns. Has not thrown a pick. He's 174 through the air. So I, I just it's I get it, but at the same time, you got another tough challenge here. You're trying to pull an upset. You're trying to win your 6th game to get into a bowl, but you're going on the road to play a ranked team in Missouri. I mean, let me ask you, because I just scratched my head at it, because is this that type of game where you really want to put the pressure on him?
Well, they may not have a choice, right? That's where this starts. I guess technically you have a choice. Luke Kromenhoek is on the roster, but it's very clear now that Luke Kromenhoek, he came to Mississippi State because you needed numbers, and it was a talented option in the room. Kamario Taylor is obviously the guy who was replaced him. So there's really not a question. If Blake Shapen can't go, it's going to be Kamario Taylor. Is it an ideal situation going on the road against a team in Missouri that we'll talk about here later in the show has a very good pass rush, and your weakness being along the offensive line? No, that's not a great spot to be in. That's not an easy place to play, and that's, again, a defense that can give you a lot of problems. But at the same time, last year you had Michael Van Buren, his first start going on the road at Texas, right? So sometimes you've got guys you don't have a choice. They got to be in that type of a situation. And look, Levy has already said there's not going to be a decision to be made. But if Shapen can go, Shapen's going to play. That's a little bit of a different discussion that we'll get to here in a couple of moments. But is it ideal? No, but you really don't necessarily have a choice. And it sounds like they are preparing heavily, as I said a few minutes ago, for the possibility that Kamario Taylor is going to have to be the quarterback this weekend. And something Levy got asked a question about leadership, and because he was asked about guys like Brennan Thompson and Anthony Evans and guys who are leaders of the team, and they've had to step up with when Blake went down to help lift Kamario up a little bit. And like Levy went deep into talking about the leadership side, about how important that's going to be going into this game this weekend. And, you know, it could just be him speaking generally that its leadership is always important. They're going on the road against a good team, coming off a tough loss. Yeah, leadership is obviously important. But within the context of the question, it sure made it sound like, hey, we're not going to have the guy who is the leader of the offense and Blake Shapen out there, or we're not thinking we're going to have him. The other veterans are going to have to step up with Kamario there on the field, which is something, again, we've seen with when Blake has been out, and that would definitely have to continue. I mean, I'd be honest, right now, I think Kamario Taylor is Mississippi State's starting quarterback this Saturday. Not because Levy necessarily wants that to be the case, but because he doesn't necessarily have a choice. We could be wrong. We could come back to this conversation and Shapen plays, and we'll see how it goes. We'll probably get a better idea here in a couple days. But at the same time, I don't know if we will ever fully get a yes or no on Shapen's availability unless it becomes apparent, just no chance he can play. I think he's going to try to keep this as close to the vest as long as he possibly can, because your offense is so different with Kamario in versus Kamario out, and whether or not you have Blake on the field. That leads into the conversation of, if there is a choice to be had, would the right move be going to Kelly Jones? You still have bowl eligibility on the line. There are things Shapen can do in the passing game where he is going to be further along. You have more of the playbook with Blake Shapen in. But at this point, I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you think it's just time to go ahead and turn the reins over to the freshman and get him those reps and get him that development, whether it cost you a game or not? Or look, do you think it could provide a spark, and that be what lifts you to getting that last win you need to make a bowl? Where do you stand on all this?
Going with which quarterback you said?
Well, just what do you think it's time? The argument for playing Shapen is that right now you still have a chance to go to a bowl game. He is still the veteran, and when he has played well, the offense has been fine with him in. And you might trust him more to execute the full playbook, to, in a have-to-have-it situation, go out and convert for you. When you have a chance to go to a bowl, and you got these 2 games left. Whereas if that would be the argument for Shapen. Whereas with Kamario, there's probably more volatility, where the highs could be really good, but there's also a chance it's a true freshman getting in his first start. Would it go poorly? Or first couple starts, could that go poorly? But do you say, we don't care about that at this point, whether we go to a bowl game or not? We need that valuable experience because it's time to just go ahead and start looking to the future.
Yeah, I mean, like I said in the off season, I think I said it on shows with you, and I definitely said it before you and I both started the show together. The goal after a 2-10 season last year for Mississippi State was coming close to a bowl. And I know that there have been some big wins. There's been some great moments. Then you got to SEC play, it kind of went downhill. You got a couple wins. That's fine and dandy. But like, I know, like, there's a lot of State fans out there that really have their hopes up right now that there could be a spark for this offense that could lead them to yet another victory, whether it's the Egg Bowl, um, if it's Missouri this week, whatever, whichever one of those. But if you have to throw in the towel right now and just like give it your best in these games and win or lose, like just kind of turn the page to 26. Honestly, dude, and it kills me to say, I don't blame Jeff Lebby and Mississippi State for doing that. I don't. Because it's, I would say, with the way that they've played, like, I feel like there's been a lot of great moments. I feel like they have exceeded some expectations, depending on who's put them on. Like, maybe media expectations, fan expectations. I mean, there's definitely, like, I feel like Jeff Levy's won over the crowd in Starkville. I feel like he's been that guy this year. But at the same time, there's still a lot of work to do. And sometimes you just have to, late in the season, realize that, hey, it's just not going to work this year. Let's take a breather, regroup, rethink, take the next off season, and get ready for next year in 2026.
Well, and to your point about, a couple things. You talk about, it's just not going to be the year. Look, to be fair, again, you still have a chance to be bowl eligible. So I think this wouldn't even be a discussion. If you had 7 losses at this point, or even if you had 6, at that point, you're like, okay, officially, you're not making it happen. Turn the reins over to Kamario, start building for the future. That's where it is tough, is that, do you think having Blake in is just going to be the better thing for you for maximizing your opportunity to get a win when you still have a chance to go to a bowl, which would be massive for this team? It's another 15 practices. You want to talk about development for Kamario Taylor? Hey, another 15 practices is a lot of development. There's another point to be made that even if you put him in, you're not necessarily just immediately going to next year, because you could look at it and say, this guy could provide a spark and maybe help us do some things better and help the offense flow better and make the plays that win us a game. So there's that side of it. But you talked about buy-in with Levy. In a way, playing the best thing Jeff Levy could do in these last 2 games, beyond winning one of them to get to a bowl, literally would be Kamario Taylor as our quarterback for the last 2 games. Because if you do that, even if you lose both games and you get blown out in both games, then people would be upset, but I think everyone would say, hey, you turned the reins over to the kid. You turned it over to Kamario. Maybe we saw, all right, he just wasn't ready for it, the guy, but we got him that experience, and it's something we can work with moving forward. Or maybe he goes out and shows flashes, and maybe you lose the games, but you see the flashes of Kamario, and there's this excitement going to next year of like, we came up short this year, but we improved, and we've got this special quarterback to be able to build around for next season. If he's not the guy the last 2 games and it's Shapen and you lose those games, there's going to be a lot of frustrations. Levy's not going to be fired, and I don't think you would go into next year with, it would be you definitely got to take another step forward. You got to get to a bowl, got to win more, but it wouldn't be, a top 5 hot seat in the country. But there would still be a lot of people frustrated with how you would close the year, because it's like, why did you not turn the reins over to this guy? We didn't even get to a bowl. You could have gotten him experience. You could have seen if getting him out there would be able to propel you to something. Playing Kamario is like the best thing I think Levy could do for his own, like, in terms of buy-in from the fan base. Now, how much does that really matter? Who knows? And if he thinks the best thing for this team's chances to win is Blake, then I guess that's going to be what it is. And again, we don't know if Shapen's going to be able to play this weekend or not. But and if he's able to, Levy has made it clear that's who's going to play. But I think you're turning to the point where it might be the best thing for him to go to Kamario. And we talk about the impact on the field, because that's the other side of it. I put out the tweet that it comes down to a debate of, like, having Kamario on the field. What you know is that you're going to be able to run the football more. He's got some playmaking ability. He's got escapability that when he's under pressure, he can evade sacks in a way that Blake Shapen cannot. He can take a play that's in danger and turn it into an explosive play in a way that Blake Shapen cannot. Now, what you lose is access again to a full array of the playbook and having maybe more calls for more situations, but also just from a down-to-down execution of the offense. Like, Shapen can do things in the quick passing game, in the intermediate passing game, when it comes to, throwing crossing routes, throwing quick game, that right now Kamario has not shown the ability to be able to do with any sort of consistency, because the accuracy is just not there. The timing's not fully there, which there was been a point raised, and I think Robbie Falk asked Levy about this today in the press conference. That's something that could just come with more reps, and it probably could. That part of the game that is lacking for him, just getting him on the field and getting him more settled in and not just throwing him to the fire, he could improve upon that, and then we're not even talking about losing that side of it. But I guess the assumption is, like, that part of the passing game, you're not going to be as effective throwing the football down to down as maybe you would be with Shapen in. So like it's weighing what you add in the run game and the playmaking ability versus what you lose in the pass game. But what I said is like if it comes out, if you think you will be better down to down by being able to run the football more effectively with Kamario in, and also just enough of those plays where he just makes something happen, then you got to play him. You know, the deep passing game is basically the same between the two of them. Like they both can throw a pretty deep ball. They both got plenty of arm strength. They both can also misfire. But I think Kamario, when it comes to the wide open deep throws, has been more on the money than Shapen has to this point. Maybe he just hasn't had enough of those opportunities to know for sure. Like, I mean, Kamario's had some downfield throws as well where he threw the ball and there's multiple defenders there, and it's like, all right, let's not do that. He hasn't thrown an interception yet, but he's gotten away with a few throws. So there is some of that volatility there for sure. But I don't know. I think I'm kind of leaning towards I think it would make your offense better at this point. I think what it does for you in the run game and just how much better State's able to run the football when he's on the field. Something I talked about a lot going into the season because there was so much conversation of State, like the offensive line they recruited are better run blockers than they are pass blockers. They recruited these receivers who are, shifty and explosive receivers where they're good in space, they're good downfield. Maybe they're not as good though when it comes to all the other aspects of receiving. And I think those guys have grown over the course of the season. I think Anthony Evans, Brennan Thompson have both been really good and have turned into complete receivers for MSU. But they're at their best, vertical down the field. They're at their best taking a quick screen and turning it upfield. Running those type of plays from like having those type of plays be what best maximizes your receivers better complements a dominant run game where you can continually churn and pick up yards between the tackles and or even outside the tackles, whatever. Just churn up yards on the ground, and then we have the quick throws on the RPOs off of it. We have the vertical shots down the field off of it. And right now, State does not have that consistency in the run game because you have a quarterback in Blake Shapen that is just not a dual threat. Now, I don't think it's an issue when they call quarterback runs with Shapen, and I don't think Shapen is immobile. I think he can do some of that stuff. But clearly, you're much more effective with it with Kamario in the game. And, I mentioned Robbie Falk a second ago. Like a point he made on Thunder and Lightning today that I thought was very interesting was he talked about how you saw some of those quick perimeter throws on the quick screens that State has tried to do some this year that frequently have not worked. We're more effective with Kamario in the game. And a lot of that is because you have the defenders who have to deal with either, okay, we have to defend the run or we have to defend the pass. So those guys in the slot, those linebackers, they're all so concerned about Kamario Taylor taking off and running that you actually get space to make those throws out wide. This offense, I think, could function better with Kamario in at this point. And even if you have a few plays that go poorly, he does so many things impressively that I think the overall positive it'd be an overall positive for MSU. I think you're at the point where it's time to make the move.
I agree. I mean, I think, you kind of shake hands with Blake Shapen. You thank him, because he has had his good moments too. But, this, okay, being an Alabama fan here, like I remind you guys, it makes me think so much about the only difference was they made the switch obvious like right after the national title in 2017. But remember, they replaced Jalen Hurts with Tua. So you had this guy that carried the team on his back, did a lot of great things, but also had his struggle moments at times. And then you switched to Tua, and it amped up in the way that he led the offense. That's kind of how I view it with Kamario Taylor, man. Like, just let him do his thing, give him a chance, let him run loose out there, lead the offense. You thank Shapen for what he's been able to do because he has had some good moments and good plays. But at the same time, if you need a boost and you need to tell this guy to sit on the bench or just, whatever he's got to do, um, transfer wise, I mean, yeah, I agree with you, man. It's time to make a switch for Mississippi State. Not even just the rest of this year, but it's going to lead into 2026 and ultimately what this offense could be.
Well, just over the weekend and in a game involving your team, Garrett Nussmeier got benched for LSU and Michael Van Buren
Right.
steps in. And, like, I understand Garrett Nussmeier's not been great this season, and LSU
Mhm.
fans have turned on him hard. Garrett Nussmeier, I still think, I think he got put into a really rough situation with LSU and just everything wrong with that offense, with the offensive line, the lack of a run game. Some of those receivers have not emerged as the ways they thought they were. The play calling was not good. Like, Nussmeier, I still think is an incredibly talented player and is someone who, put in the right situation, could be really, really good quarterback. And I think LSU really let him down.
Yeah.
Nussmeier's a lot better player than Blake Shapen. And I think Kamario Taylor is a more talented player than Michael Van Buren. Van Buren is a good player. I'm not saying this because he left Mississippi State. He is a talented player who showed some things last year that I thought were very impressive for his long-term development. I think he can be a good player. But Kamario is more talented than Michael Van Buren is. So if we're
Mhm.
talking about a guy in Garrett Nussmeier being able to be replaced in his final year at LSU for Michael Van Buren, you can replace Blake Shapen for Kamario Taylor. Like, you can do it too. And you bring up the Alabama thing. If you can make a change in the national championship game with a guy who helped get you there, you can make a change when you're trying to just get bowl eligible. And look, this may all be a moot point because it might be Kamario Taylor just has to play because we might find out Blake Shapen's done for the year. We don't know for sure. But at this point, we've seen what this offense is under Blake. We've seen the highs and lows and where it's gotten you. And it feels like just so many things have to go right for you to be successful. Going with the guy who can sort of just make something happen and letting him get that experience and hoping that it pays off, I think is the correct move.